Hello YouTube, Dave here again. So, in the wake of the Stream of Many Eyes, another announcement has come from Wizards of the Coast, or I guess it's sort of a pre-announcement announcement. However, what we seem to be getting is that in 2019, Wizards of the Coast is going to be expanding into different campaign settings. And this is pretty big news, because it's something that, I know myself personally I've been pushing for quite some time, and really feel like the Tales from the Yawning Portal book would have been a really great opportunity to have introduced the world of Grayhawk. Simply take out the Dead and Thay adventure, and everything else was set in that setting by default. So it would have been, a great opportunity. So it seems like we're finally going to get some love for the other established campaign settings. One of the things that did always kind of bother me in the early days of 5th edition was, at the beginning, the consensus was that they wanted to make a rule set that you can use any of your previously purchased products for, in terms of like the flavor of the worlds. As you can tell, Forgotten Realms has kind of gone back to almost a 3rd edition style of the setting. And that's all well and good, but, a lot of people are getting into 5th edition for the first time and don't have a collection of books from previous editions. So it's well past time for them to actually start supporting these. And I'm looking forward to it. Now, as far as what we're actually going to get, there's been some speculation, and I thought I would just sort of throw in my sort of prediction. What I think is going to happen is Wizards of the Coast is going to give the Forgotten Realms a bit of a rest in 2019. So they did say there, and I'll put a link to the article that describes what's going on here in the description. But essentially, I guess they said there's one more product to be announced for this year. In that article, if I remember it correctly, but that, the next year we'll have some, campaign setting support for other worlds. I think what that's going to be is, like I said, they're going to put, they're going to rest Forgotten Realms for a bit. And they might produce some adventures similar to what they did with Ravenloft, because if we really kind of look at it, the Ravenloft adventure, Curse of Strahd, was really sort of a campaign setting. It detailed the lands of Barovia and the people of Barovia, and went into a lot of detail as far as that goes. Enough so that you could potentially run other adventures using that realm as the setting. And I think that's the method that they're going to take with the future adventures that take place in other campaign worlds. So I don't think we're going to get a full-on like campaign setting necessarily, or at least certainly not called that. It may be almost like a Waterdeep Dragon Heist scenario where it's a where they detail a setting and then have a few adventures that you could potentially run there. So I think that's probably the most likely way that they're going to go, because with 5th edition they do have this overwhelming desire to include story-based elements in all of their products, including, like the monster supplements like Volo's Guide and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. So that's sort of how I see it going. As to which campaign settings are going to be explored, it's really kind of up in the air, and a lot of people are throwing out different names. So I thought I would just take a moment to talk about the settings that I think are the most likely to be addressed in the upcoming year. So I want to start off, of course, with Grayhawk. So Grayhawk is already been referenced or alluded to based off the fact that Mordenkainen was the name bearer of the last book to be released. So Mordenkainen is obviously one of the most infamous wizards in all of the Grayhawk settings. So that's already sort of sticking their toe in the water, so to speak, as far as that goes. So I think Grayhawk is going to be a very strong candidate for the first campaign setting to be explored. It's one of the earliest ones for Dungeons and Dragons, so it's really only kind of fitting that they give it, at least a little bit more of a spotlight. The Grayhawk setting is also similar enough to the Forgotten Realms that switching over storylines from one to the other would be relatively easy. I mean, there are certain elements that would be a little bit more difficult to introduce from one to the other, like the Scarlet Brotherhood in the world of Grayhawk, or maybe like the Red Wizards of Thay, even though it's kind of weird that they both have like shades of red in their name and descriptions. But anyway, but for the most part, I think it would be one of the easier settings to sort of be able to jump from one to the other in. And I think that's, not necessarily a bad thing at all, and that might make them feel a little bit more comfortable introducing this world. So I think that's one that they're definitely going to be looking at. Another strong candidate, I would have to say, is probably going to be the Dragonlance setting. The Dragonlance setting is another one of those early classic D&D campaign worlds, and it's one that they, again, sort of alluded to with Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, talking about the Kender and the Gully Dwarves, for example. So I think it's another one of those settings that has a very strong possibility of being presented and something that they could do something with. The only thing with the Dragonlance setting is, depending on which era they decide to place it in, it might be a little bit more difficult to convert adventures. For example, if it's during the era in which, the gods have abandoned the people of Krynn, then having you play clerics might be kind of difficult. So it's kind of up in the air as far as that goes. I think if we did get anything Dragonlance related, it would very much take the form of a campaign where they give you enough information about the locations in the campaign that it constitutes sort of its own setting. And I think that's definitely the way that they would go with that. Another interesting option would be Planescape. So Planescape is one of those campaign settings that at the time of release seemed to get a very sort of mixed reception. I think a lot of consumers were just kind of fatigued by the sheer amount of campaign setting information that there was for second edition AD&D. I had a lot of people say that, the Planescape stuff really didn't sell very well during its initial lifespan. But since then, it's sort of developed almost a cult following, and it's become one of the most popular post-mortem campaign settings that has been out there. Now, I love the idea of Planescape, and I think it would be really easy to have a Planescape setting and have it in the guise of a guidebook to the various planes of existence, and basically like the Manual of the Planes kind of concept, only with obviously a name. So it could be the Sigil's Gazetteer, or could be the Lady of Pain's Guide to the Planes. I don't know how they would do it, but I think that would be a great way to introduce sort of the Planescape setting. They've already mentioned Sigil a few times as far as a central location, so just having it detailed in a little bit more thoroughly, talking more about the factions and the wars between the different factions that they've had there, as well as spelling out some of the details for other planes that you can access from Sigil, I think would be a great way to sort of introduce that campaign setting. And at the same time, you're also introducing more than just the Planescape setting to it, right? You're introducing all these other planes, or really kind of detailing what they're like, and you just so happen to have the central hub of Sigil to go off of. And you could even use that central hub of Sigil as a jumping off point for all kinds of other future adventures. So I think Planescape would also be another very, very strong choice. My sentimental choice, and the one that I'd really like to see, again, I don't think it's going to be the first one, because I really think World of Greyhawk is probably going to take that spot. But after that, if there's any campaign setting that I would love to see redone, it's the Eberron campaign setting. Now, my thoughts and opinions on Eberron have sort of changed back and forth over the years. Like, when it was first announced, the way that it was marketed just really left sort of a sour taste in a lot of our mouths. And I mean, as you can see, like the Warforged, for example, have pretty much always been at the forefront of the marketing for Eberron, which was sort of throwing in your face the thing that sort of makes it the most different. Which can be a good thing, but for some people it just, kind of turns them away from the product. And that's sort of what happened to me until I actually decided to, give it a bit of a chance, and now I own all the source books for 3.5 and the 2 books for 4th edition. And yeah, I would love to see this setting again. The biggest reason that I would love to see this is it's, aside from possibly the Planescape setting of the ones that I've detailed here, the Eberron campaign setting is sort of the most unique. It offers the biggest differences for games and groups. For example, you know, you have your gnomes. Your friendly, you know, happy-go-lucky little tinkerers and, you know, creators of these small little, you know, mechanical toys in the regular D&D setting, able to speak with, you know, woodland creatures and, you know, almost Disney-esque in the way that they're presented. In Eberron, they're kind of like a League of Assassins, if I recall correctly. So it's just something that you would never really take. And one of the beautiful things about Eberron is it takes all the things that make Dungeons & Dragons great and it sort of turns them on their side. So it really, you know, switches things up. Now, that said, that's also the reason why it might be the most difficult one for them to put out. Because if you look at things like the Planescape, you can bundle in as a planar handbook, which is perfectly fine. Grayhawk and Dragonlance have both been around since the, you know, the late 70s, early 80s. So they would, again, you know, they sort of have that classic sort of fantasy feel to them, similar to what the Forgotten Realms has. But with Eberron, it feels a little bit more modern. You know, you have magic taking the place of technology. You have lightning rails that operate similar to like bullet trains here on, you know, in our world. You've got, you know, the elemental airships. You have just magic being used as, you know, as technology would. It's really that replacement for it. You've got, you know, magical lights that take the form of electronic lights. You have, you know, just all these different things that really set it apart, which is why I think it would make a great addition to the 5th edition library because it can provide such an alternative. The other thing that's great about the Eberron setting, more so than most of the others, is you could really run just about any type of campaign setting in there. If you wanted to have a conspiracy-based campaign where you're worried about people being, you know, taken over, you could look no further than the Inspired and sort of their machinations, and you can have a campaign that sort of revolves around that kind of idea of, you know, these entities from this outer plane sort of influencing and taking things over. If you wanted to run an adventure based solely on urban or even political intrigue, that certainly exists in the Eberron campaign setting. If you wanted to run an almost like Indiana Jones style exploration campaign where the characters, you know, brave these, you know, old ancient tombs and crypts and ruins, then you can do that by having them go to Zendrick. You could have, you know, an apocalyptic sort of campaign potentially with things like the Draconic Prophecy and what all that stuff means with the dragon marks and how they manifest and what they could be used for. You could have a mystery campaign revolving around what caused the Day of Mourning, or even what caused the decline or the collapse of the giant civilization from what it once was on Zendrick to having the nearly primal giants that you have now. So there's just so many things that you can do with the Eberron campaign setting that, you know, I think it would be a great product to have. Again, it's probably, unfortunately, the least likely of the ones that I've presented here. And I think the way it's probably going to go is Grayhawk first, Dragonlance second, and then probably, if they do Planescape, then it would be after that. So let me know in the comments below, what settings do you want to see potentially revived for D&D 5th edition, and how much support do you think they're going to get? I guess I should just touch on that before I wrap this video up, because that was another question that someone had asked me when they sent me a link to the announcement, or the not quite announcement. And you know, the question is it going to be, you know, like physical books that they're putting out, or is it going to be, you know, DM's Guild items, or you know, Unearthed Arcana articles that you can use to create these settings? And so to answer that, I sort of already did. I think it's going to take the form of similar to what we're going to be getting with Waterdeep Dragon Heist, or what we've had with Tomb of Annihilation and Curse of Strahd so far, which is a adventure that takes place within the campaign setting that they detail in the book, so within that region. I don't know if we're necessarily going to get a comprehensive guide to the world of Grayhawk, for example, but they may focus on some particular areas where the adventure itself takes place. We might get another one of those in a couple of years to sort of detail another location, but I think for the most part they're probably going to do something similar to what they have with the Forgotten Realms, which is find sort of their favorite region and sort of stick with it. So it'll take, that's my theory, is that it'll take the form of that adventure slash campaign setting format, where they will probably have, again, just levels like 1 through 5, similar to what they have now. And then future adventures that they release, like their major campaigns, might be easily convertible enough that you could play them really anywhere, and would have just a little bit more in terms of detailed notes on how to convert to, say, from Forgotten Realms to Grayhawk, which cities and locations to use, which named NPCs would you be using in that situation. In that way they can, have the settings out there and then just have all of their subsequent, adventures and campaigns or what have you, be usable in just about any of those settings. I think beyond that, the biggest probably contribution to supporting those settings is likely going to come from DM's Guild with user-generated content, because that's something that Wizards of the Coast has really sort of tried to encourage, is, people saying, if you want to support, a particular thing, then, make an adventure for it and put it up on DM's Guild. So I think that's where we're probably going to get a fair amount of our adventures, but we'll see how it goes. So anyway, as I was saying before, let me know in the comments below, what settings would you like to see back? Would you like to see things like Mystara, Hollow World, Spelljammer? I've heard some people wanting to see some Spelljammer action, which, would be kind of cool and interesting as well. Dark Sun is one that I kind of omitted, and I know that they are looking at potentially introducing psionics back into 5th edition, so a Dark Sun setting would be the perfect place to have that information included into. So again, there's a lot of interesting possibilities, so again, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Thank you very much for watching, I appreciate it, and all of your support. We'll see you next time. Take care.